Ladies and gentlemen, one of the great all-time Arizonans, but more than that, one of the great all-time Americans, Senator John McCain. Good to have you here.
Well, I thank you for your kind words, Mayor, and thank you for your great service to really one of the most important cities in America. And the participation we see this morning is an example of the civic pride that all of us feel in the East Valley. And could I just mention, mayors are very important. I think you know that. And I just provide just one brief story. When I was first elected to the Senate, at 2 o'clock in the morning one night, the phone rang, and I answered the phone, and the president then said, "John, this is Marcella. It's Marcella Peters, who lived in Chandler. She was one of my staunchest supporters. She was president of the Chandler Republican Women's Club, a very important person." And I answered the phone and I said, hello? She said, "This is Marcella." I said, "What is it?" She said, "I've got a terrible problem, terrific problem." I said, "What is it?" She said, "They're changing the garbage pickup in front of my home from Tuesday morning to Thursday morning." She said, "I have to be up late on Wednesday night at Chandler Republican Women's Club, and I have to be up early on Thursday morning because of the Republican meeting." We talked for a little while about this issue of the changing the garbage pickup, and I said, "Well, Marcella, why don't you call the mayor of Chandler and discuss this issue with him?" She said, "Oh no, I wouldn't want to bother an important man like that." An important man like that with an issue this trivial. So I think we should understand the importance of mayors. And also, by the way, this mayor has been and is outstanding, and mayors are closest to the people, and it's not an accident that Mesa is what it is. So can we thank again Mayor Tom? Also want to thank our friends from Resolution Copper. Everybody's here. MD Helicopters, Boeing, that makes the best helicopter on Earth. I want to tell you, with my job and as chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, every country on Earth wants this is the best weapon system made. MD Helicopter is superb, and I'm so proud of what's going to provide tremendous economic development for one of the least privileged economic parts of our state, and that's through Resolution Copper. At some point, Resolution Copper will provide 25% of America's copper supply. This will be a remarkable and employ thousands of people. So I'd like to thank our Resolution Copper folks who are here today also. In case you haven't met Andrew, he doesn't speak English very well, but you're Australian? That's right. Australian, so you might want to meet him. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm really unnecessary. You're awesome at this. Anything else you'd like to say while you're here? He's been on Letterman so many times. He's a natural. Well, that's great, and thank you. You know, by the way, I don't have a problem with my trash, but I did get a speeding ticket. Can you help me with that at all? We'll talk about that later.
I think we can do something.
I joke about this, but I would like to say, and I think I speak for everybody in the room, thank you for your service, not only militarily, but your service for your whole life. We really appreciate that. And thanks for being kind of a figurehead for the great state of Arizona.
Well, I thank you. And obviously, I had a tough act to follow in Barry Goldwater, as many of us know. In fact, it's raining this morning. I can't help. Barry used to say that we have so little water in Arizona, the trees chase the dogs. But I'm very happy to be here this morning, and I'm very privileged to serve. I landed at Sky Harbor Airport coming home last week. A guy ran up to me and said, "Say," he said, "anybody ever tell you look a lot like Senator John McCain?" I said, "Yeah." He said, doesn't it sometimes make you mad as heck? So thank you for your kind words as well.
Awesome. That's hilarious. Well, we got the questions coming in. Let me see if I can. Oh boy, let me get this out of the way. I don't know how my copy of Faith of My Fathers would happen to be here with a Sharpie.
Thanks.
It's weird the way that happened. I bring it here every month hoping you'll stop by. I didn't know you were a southpaw. That's
Illegible.
awesome. Before I thank him, I should see what he wrote. Well, I know there's a lot of stuff. Thank you very much, Senator.
Sure.
I know there's a lot of stuff going on in Washington.
Yep.
And you're of course up for election. What would you like to say of the state of Washington, the state of Arizona, and what your vision is?
Well, first of all, could I say I've been honored to serve in the Congress and in the Senate ever since the Coolidge administration. Silent Cal was one of my favorites of all. But seriously, I've been honored to serve, and I would make an argument that the world is in more turmoil and more crises than at any time since the end of World War II. There are now more refugees in the world since the end of World War II, millions. And we need a strong military, and we need a president who will lead. I'm not here to be partisan, but my friends, the world isn't the way it is today by accident. It's because of a thing called leading from behind. America has to lead from in front. The Senate Armed Services Committee plays a very key role in defending this nation, in training equipment, in policy and reform. We've just passed the largest reform bill, according to the Heritage Foundation, the largest reform bill in the last 30 years. And I won't go into all the details of it, but I'll give you one example. Right now, 85% of those men and women who serve in the military, when they finish their time in the military, do not receive any financial reward, because 20 years is the minimum before you do that. We changed it so that now 85% of those who serve will, because after 2 years and 1 month, you can go in a thing like a 401k of matching funds. That's just an example of some of the things that we have done. By the way, keeping the A-10 at Davis-Monthan, and also that the Air Force was trying to retire and is now flying in combat in Iraq and Syria. But most importantly, we try to make policies as well as how we can best defend the nation. On the other side of the coin, I'm proud of my record in the state of Arizona, whether it be the Yuma Heritage Crossing down in Yuma, Arizona, which is now a pristine area, to the fish hatchery, which broke down up in Lake Havasu, to the 10-year effort we made on Resolution Copper to get the mine, the situation so that the mine was approved. And I could go through another long list. And I've worked hard for Arizona, and I think I have a lot more to do. I do not take any election lightly. Those that do are now doing other things. and I wish we could have a Trump-free morning, but but this is a very volatile time in our political history. And my dear friends, when I first started, Mesa is not what it is today. And it isn't my responsibility, but it's leaders like John Giles and people who are in this room who have made such a success of the East Valley as being a wonderful place to live and to work and raise our children. And I've been honored to represent you.
That's great. I know that I know that a cause that is very near and dear to your heart is our veterans and their treatment, and you've been at the forefront of trying to make sure that the VA gets their act together. Any news on that?
There's been slow improvement. It's been very slow. Sometimes you hear things that you just can't hardly believe. For example, we found out a couple of months ago that they're trying to build a hospital, a VA hospital in Denver, Colorado. There's a $1.7 billion cost overrun. I mean, how many veterans could we treat with that kind of thing? The major progress we've made is after the terrible thing that happened at Phoenix VA where 50 veterans died while awaiting on a phantom waiting list, I was asked to negotiate a VA reform bill. Guess who I negotiated with, because he was chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee. Democrats were in the majority then, Bernie Sanders. Now it's interesting negotiating with the only socialist, announced socialist in the United States Senate. A little bit different view of the role of government. But we came up with a compromise that I think was very helpful. And I won't go through all the details of it, but the major part of it that I wanted was a choice card. Every veteran should be able to go to the health care provider of their choice rather than waiting in line someplace, whether it's real or not, the waiting list. And so in the compromise, we had to have it within, you have to live outside of 40 miles or wait more than 2 weeks. My goal now is to make that choice card available. The VA does great work on certain things: traumatic brain injury, prosthesis, PTSD. They're the best. On other areas of healthcare, the outside is just as good or even better, and we don't want our veterans to have to wait. So to make a long story short, we've made some progress, but it still is just infuriating when we know that only one person, one person, has been fired because of the scandal that took place and scandals that have taken. You don't have credibility when, now a bunch of them are on, quote, administrative leave at your expense, but there's nobody that has been fired, and that is very disappointing.
It's hard to imagine. Well, the questions are rolling in. I do know this, a couple of questions. I know you're a big sports fan. I was going to ask you your prediction on the race.
Coyotes won last night up in Calgary. For the first time in 8 years, they beat the Calgary Flames up in Calgary, and we've got some great young players. You know, there's a young kid that just turned 20 named Max Domi. Watch him play hockey, my friends. This kid is going to be great, and still the finest athlete I've ever known. Well, three of the greatest people I've known: Larry Fitzgerald, Shane Doan, and Goldie. Those are the three finest young men I think I have met. Shane Doan left a little town in Canada called Halkirk, a town of 150 people, at age 15, and went to play hockey in the junior league. He's been with us now for 19 years. He's an amazing guy, and he could have left. He could have left, but he wanted to raise his children right here in the Valley, and I'm very proud of him.
That's awesome. Well, I was going to ask you your predictions on the presidential race, but I would rather ask you, what do you think? Tell me predictions on the Cardinals, the Diamondbacks with Greinke and their new uniforms, and you've already talked about the Coyotes. I know you're a big sports fan.
First of all, we hate the Dodgers, right? All of us hate the Dodgers. Right? Yeah. Hate the Dodgers. Hate them. I'll never forget when they did more than that in the pool, and that's what's. And that's what's infuriating. It's a great get, Greinke, obviously. I think we're obviously going to be competitive now. Our hitting has always been good. Pollock and Goldie are two of the best hitters in all of baseball, so I think we're going to be fine. The Suns are in real trouble, we know, and I don't know what the answer there is. I guess as a result of last Sunday, we can make chicken salad. You know, it's a good lesson. We needed a wake-up call, all that. Great. I think we'll do very well. I think the game probably that will determine the Super Bowl champion will be when we play the Seahawks. And fortunately, we'll play them here. We won't be playing them up in Seattle. So I think that is going to be maybe... ever since we played Pittsburgh for the national championship, it'll be the biggest sporting event as far as our valley is concerned. Stick with this Coyotes team. There's been ownership problems. We have good owners now for the first time in many years. There's real question as to what their future will be. There's other cities around America that are trying to get them to come there. Their contract is up in a couple of years with the city of Glendale, so I hope we'll all get behind going out to see them. And I know it's a long drive from East Valley, but I think it'd be helpful to keep them here if we supported them. And I'm very excited about the D-backs. And I'm glad Ken Kendrick was willing to spend a lot of money, and he spent a lot of money for Reineke, as you know. But that shows their commitment. What's a better day than to go see the Diamondbacks play on a 115-degree day in the stadium and have a couple of Buds or Coors?
Man, right down the middle with this guy. Well, I know you've got...
Cindy would say Buds.
Yeah, exactly. I noticed she's sitting as close to the door as possible.
Could I just say one word about Cindy? She's been very heavily involved now for a long time in the issue of human trafficking. And I think it's an issue that a lot of us shy away from because it's such a distasteful and horrible thing that goes on. But unfortunately, it's on the increase in the world and in the country. And I'm proud of her work on human trafficking, and I hope we'll all take time to get engaged in that issue.
Well, I know you're incredibly busy. Your schedule is full. We've been for a long time. You've been on our wish list to get you in here, and I really appreciate you coming today and kicking off 2016. And good luck to you on your upcoming election. And
I'd like for us to honor the custom of Chicago, and that is they honor the dead so much they let them vote. So you might want to adopt that here. I don't know if you ever heard the story about the two inmates in the chow line in the state prison, and one of them turned to the other and said, "The food was a lot better in here when you were governor." But you can't tell that joke in Illinois, by the way.
that is awesome. Well, Senator McCain, this next round of applause is for you. Thank you so much for being here. This is John McCain.